John 18:36. Yeshua answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Judean leaders. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." So Pilate said to him, "Are you a king then?" Yeshua answered, "You say that I am a king. For this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, so that I might testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" After he said this, he went out again to the Judean leaders, and he said to them, "I find no case against him, but it's your custom that I release someone for you at Passover. So do you want me to release you the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Not this one, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a revolutionary. John 19. Then Pilate took Yeshua and had him scourged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and dressed him up in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" and slapping him over and over. Pilate came out again. He said to them, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you, to let you know that I find no case against him." So Yeshua came out, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. "Behold the man," Pilate said to them. When the ruling Kohanim and officers saw him, they yelled out, "Execute him, execute him." Pilate said to him, "Take him yourselves and execute him, for I don't find a case against him." The Judean leaders answered him, "We have a law, and according to the Torah he must die, because he claimed to be Ben Elohim." When Pilate heard this word, he became even more fearful. He went into the praetorium again and said to Yeshua, "Where are you from?" But Yeshua gave him no answer. So Pilate said to him, "You aren't speaking to me. Don't you know what I have the authority to release you, and I have the authority to crucify you?" Yeshua answered, "You would have no authority over me if it hadn't been given to you from above. For this reason, the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin." Pilate tried to let him go after this, but the Judean leaders cried out, saying, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." So when Pilate heard these words, he brought Yeshua out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, but in Aramaic, Gawatha. It was the day of preparation for Passover, about the 6th hour, and Pilate said to the Judean leaders, "Behold your king." They shouted back, take him away, execute him." Pilate said to them, "Should I execute your king?" The ruling Kohanim answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Finally, Pilate handed Yeshua over to be crucified. Then they took Yeshua. He went out carrying his own crossbar to the place of a skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with 2 others, one on each side, and Yeshua in between. Pilate also wrote a sign and put it on the execution stake. It was written, "Yeshua HaNatzrati, the King of the Jews." Many Judeans read this sign because of the place where Yeshua was executed. It was near the city. It was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. The ruling Kohanim of the Judeans were saying to Pilate, "Don't write the King of the Jews," but that he said, "I am the King of the Jews. What I have written, I have written." Pilate answered. So the soldiers, when they executed Yeshua, took his outer garments and made 4 parts, a part for each soldier. They took his tunic also, but it was seamless, woven top to bottom in one piece. So they said to one another, "Let's not tear it, but cast lots for it to see who it will be." This was so the scripture would be fulfilled. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. So the soldiers did these things. Standing near the execution stake of Yeshua were his mother's sister Miriam, the wife of Clopas, and Miriam from Magdala. Yeshua saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby. He tells his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he tells the disciple, "Behold your mother." From that very hour, the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Yeshua knew that all the things were now completed to fulfill the scripture, he said, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was sitting there, so they put a sponge soaked with sour wine on a hyssop branch and brought it to his mouth. When Yeshua tasted the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. It was the day of preparation, and the next day was the festival of Shabbat. So that the body should not remain in the execution stake during Shabbat, the Judean leaders asked Pilate to have the legs broken and to have the bodies taken away. So the soldiers came down and broke the legs of the first and then the other who had been executed with Yeshua. Now, when they came to Yeshua, they saw that he was already dead. They did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood and water came out. He who has seen it has testified, and his testimony is true. He knows that he is telling the truth so that you may believe. These things happened so that the scripture would be fulfilled. Not a bone of his shall be broken. And again another scripture says, "They shall look on him whom they have pierced." After these things, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate if he could take Yeshua's body away. Joseph was a disciple of Yeshua, but secretly for fear of the Judean leaders. Pilate gave permission, so Joseph came and took the body away. Nicodemus, who had first visited Yeshua at night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 100 pounds. Then they took the body of Yeshua and wrapped it in linen with the spices as a Jewish burial custom. Now in the place where he was executed there was a garden, and in the garden was a brand new tomb where no one had yet been buried. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation and the tomb was nearby, they laid Yeshua there. John 20. Early in the morning on the first day of the week, while it is still dark, Miriam from Magdala comes to the tomb. She sees that the stone has been rolled away from the tomb, so she comes running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Yeshua loved. She tells them, "They've taken the master out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've put him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out, going to the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and arrived at the tomb first. Leaning in, he sees the linen strips lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter comes following him, and he entered the tomb. He looked upon the linen strips lying there, and the face cloth that had been on his head. It was not lying with the linen strips, but was rolled up in a place by itself. So then the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also entered. He saw and believed. For they did not yet understand from Scripture that Yeshua must rise from the dead, so the disciples went back to their own homes. But Miriam stood outside the tomb weeping, and as she was weeping, she bent down to look into the tomb. She sees two angels in white sitting, one at the head and one at the feet where Yeshua's body had been lying. "Woman, why are you crying?" they said to her. She says to them, "Because they took away my master, and I don't know where they've put him." After she said these things, she turned around, and she sees Yeshua standing there. She didn't know that it was Yeshua. Yeshua says to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for?" Thinking he's the gardener, she says to him, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've put him, and I will take him away." Yeshua says to her, "Miriam." Turning around, she says to him in Aramaic, "Rabbani," which means teacher. Yeshua says to her, "Stop clinging to me, for I have not yet gone up to the Father. Go to my brothers and tell them, I'm going up to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Miriam from Magdala comes, announcing to the disciples, "I've seen the Lord," and what he had said to her. It was evening on that day, the first of the week. When the doors were locked where the disciples were for the fear of the Judean leaders, Yeshua came and stood in their midst, and he said to them, "Shalom Aleichem." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Yeshua said to them again, "Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem. As the Father has sent me, I also send you." And after he said this, he breathed on them, and he said to them, "Receive the Ruach HaKodesh. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven, but if you hold back, they are held back." One of the 12, Thomas, called the twin, was not with them when Yeshua came. The other disciples were saying to him, "We've seen the Lord." But he replied to them, "Unless I see the nail prints in his hands and my finger to the mark of the nails, and put my hand in his side, I will never believe." 8 days later, and the disciples were again inside, and Thomas was with them. Yeshua comes, despite the locked doors. He stood in their midst and said, "Shalom Aleichem." And he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Reach out your hand and put it to my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord, my God." Yeshua said to him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are the ones who have not seen and yet have believed." Yeshua performed many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these things have been written about so that you may believe that Yeshua is Messiah ben Elohim, and that by believing you may also have life in his name. John 21. After these things, Yeshua revealed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. Now here is how he appeared. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in the Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 of the other disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going to fishing." "We're coming with you too," they said. Then they went out and got into the boat. And that night they caught nothing. At dawn, Yeshua stood on the beach, but the disciples didn't know that it was Yeshua. So Yeshua said to them, "Boys, you don't happen to have any fish, do you?" "No," they answered him. He said to them, "Throw the net off the right side of the boat and you'll find some." So they threw the net, and they were not able to haul it in because of the great number of fish. Therefore the disciple whom Yeshua loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he tied his outer garment around himself, for he was stripped down for work, and he threw himself into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat from about 200 cubits offshore, dragging the net full of fish. So when they got out into the land, they saw a charcoal fire with fish placed on it and bread. Yeshua said to them, "Bring some of the fish you just caught." Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net to shore. There were 153 fish, many of them big, but the net was not broken. Yeshua said to them, "Come, have breakfast." None of his disciples